Welcome to your Farm and Home Show. My name is Joanna Coles, and today we're visiting with Dr. Amanda Gumbert. She's with the University of Kentucky as Extension Water Quality Specialist there.
Yeah, well, Joanna, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you again and also talk about wetlands. They are very special features of the landscape. So when we think about like the definition of a wetland, we think about the soils that are there. So are those soils saturated or have some indication that they are wet for a good portion of the year? Do we have wetland hydrology? Meaning, do we have water? Is there water saturating the soil? Is there water on the surface, ponded water that, for at least a certain period of time throughout the year? And then we also look for wetland plants. So wet plants that are really specialized, that they don't mind having their feet wet, so to speak. They don't mind being in saturated soil. Some of them actually thrive that way. So those are the three things. We look for hydrology, we look for plants, and we look at the soils. When we think about wet areas in a field, oftentimes we have lower production. Like you said, we might get equipment stuck. And every farmer knows where the wet spots in their field are. And the soils don't warm up in the spring as soon, all those kind of things. And so historically, we have had a history in agriculture as well as, development of draining wetlands. But they do play a really critical role in the ecosystem. So they kind of function like the kidneys, so to speak, of the landscape. They filter water that's going through. They can keep contaminants that might be on the soil surface and, in an area nearby. They can keep those from moving into our water resources, our streams, our lakes, our rivers that we might be using for drinking water or for irrigation. And so they kind of cleanse the water on the landscape. So they're really great functionally that way. And they're also a great habitat source. There are a lot of birds. There are even otters that would use our wetlands. Reptiles, amphibians. People sometimes get a little skittish about wetlands, but they are just really critical ecologically. They are really an important part of the landscape.
And if we had an area that we knew where it had wetter nature, is there ways that we can manage that area to make it better?
Yeah, and I want to say though, some of the common types of wetlands we might see on our own properties are vernal ponds or vernal pools. Those are kind of seasonally wet areas. Those are really important for amphibians like frogs and salamanders that might use those to lay their eggs in. And if we have those in the landscape, if we can avoid using that area, if it's adjacent to a wood, the woodlot or on the edge of a field, maybe we just don't farm that area anymore because oftentimes the production may be low. Our return on investment might not really be there. And so it might, have some yield drag anyway. If it's an area that, is in our yard, that gets a little complicated if we're worried about our foundations of our homes, et cetera. But just kind of acknowledging and noticing where these wet areas are. And if we can incorporate them into a naturalized area, then it gives them, some level of protection.
Yeah, because you mentioned there are plants that like that environment. And so we can utilize some of those plants in there to maybe provide some beauty, a little bit more habitat, and kind of manage that wetland area.
Yeah, absolutely. And, cattails are one that everybody's familiar with. They can get a little crazy. They can spread and take over an area. But there are all kinds of trees that don't mind, being in wet areas. And sometimes those trees and shrubs can really function to take up water, excess water in that wetland area that, might otherwise run off to a spot that we don't want it. So they can work in our favor also. And so we're just hoping that folks will, recognize the benefits that wetlands bring. They're a great opportunity for bird watching. A healthy wetland that has lots of different plants and animals there, you often don't have a mosquito problem because nature is taking care of itself there. So we have a new publication just about understanding Kentucky's wetlands. And then we have another one coming out soon. So, a little spoiler alert there. We've got a new one coming that is predominantly pictures and, little blurbs of information that, folks of all interest levels can learn about. And then on our website, we have additional resources too. So, it's at our Soil and Water Extension website. You can find lots of information about wetlands.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.